Welcome to a special driver's ed edition of Dreams and Drive, where we are going to be workshopping a real life dream driving challenge in real time. Today in the guest chair is CJ Harris, CEO of the financial empowerment platform Guapify. Before we get into today's episode, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
The McDonald's snack wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch snack wrap. Spicy snack wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I noticed there was this void. Nobody was talking to Black folks about money. And I wanted to create a safe space where we could exchange information and insights and put each other on to things that have worked for us money-wise and the challenges that we've had. And it's a space that is conducive to feeling vulnerable enough to ask the questions so that you can level up your finances and we can start to close this wealth gap.
After talking to you, it's not that you're trying to provide the expert advice, you're curating the conversations that need to happen, and conversations are what drive change. So, Dream Drivers, today's episode is a driver's ed session of Dreams and Drive where we're going to learn while we're moving. I'm sitting down with CJ Harris, CEO and founder of Guapify, for a real-life workshop on how to build trust, community, and impact when you're creating something bigger than yourself. And on this episode, CJ is going to share her journey from what it was like growing up in the Bronx and landing in media and building a career in promos and marketing and storytelling, and how those experiences shaped her belief that community and culture matter, especially when it comes to money. In this conversation, we're going to dig into what it really takes to build trust in the financial space, how Guapify is evolving into what CJ calls the Reddit of Black wealth, and why founders don't have to be the expert to lead with confidence. This is going to be a live working session, not just a highlight reel. CJ is going to ask real questions. I'm going to give her real answers. We're going to talk about real challenges and get some real clarity in motion. If you're building, if you're pivoting, or figuring it out as you go, this driver's ed session is for you. So buckle up and get excited because we are going on a journey today. Before we hear from CJ, make sure that you're following us on social media. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on all platforms. And if you want to be part of our email community, please go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join to get on our weekly email newsletter. All right, let's hear from CJ.
So thank you for having me. I am so flattered that you invited me to be on your show.
I am honored that you decided to come. Dreams and Drive has been around a long time, and you are going to be one of our last guests of the year. So great way to, end 2025, but also look forward to 2026. And I think the things that we talk about in this episode really going to help a lot of people. And I think just show people that we're all going through something. We're all along this dream driving journey together, and to really be able to help you walk through something that you've been encountering as part of your journey is going to be really fun. But let us kind of go back in time. I start on my episodes the same way with each guest, right? I would love to go back to the young CJ. Tell me what was inspiring you as a child, and give us a little bit of a background. Where were you location-wise? And then talk to me about that young CJ.
Yeah, so I'm from the Bronx, the Boogie Down, as they call it. I grew up in the River Park Towers section of the Bronx, and that's what they consider the birthplace of hip hop. So I was a kid at 11 and 12 years old, going to jams in the park, watching DJs battle, watching rap battles on the corner, watching
Are you
kids.
serious? That
Oh,
is dope.
for sure. Cool Herc and all of those guys. Grandmaster Cash, who's a very famous hip hop artist, he taught me how to shoot a jump shot. And it's funny because, I actually started playing basketball when I moved to that section of the Bronx, and I went to school on a basketball scholarship. So those are my formative years. I was at a rec center most of the time, playing everything from pool to basketball to ping pong. and just sort of being a kid in the Bronx. Like when I really grew up, like my early years, like I was a kid that was playing in the fire hydrant, like we were shooting, the water at the buses as they went by. Like I was
So
that kid.
when you think of that quintessential New York City landscape of like kids in the summer outside, like fire hydrants open, eating their
Playing
icicles, getting the Mister what's the name of the Mr.
Mr.
Softy?
Softy,
Yes.
yes, absolutely. That was absolutely my childhood. We had so many games. We would argue over what game to play, and we stayed outside. Like being inside, that was punishment. The way kids don't want to go outside now, like for you to be looking out the window at your friends playing, that was the worst punishment there was. So, I had a fun childhood. I really enjoyed growing up in the Bronx, and I love telling people that I'm from the Bronx because some of the things that have happened to me over the course of my career, you would never think it would happen to a little Black girl from the Bronx.
We're gonna have to get into that, but what was the dream for you as a kid? Was there something that you really, a lot of the guests that I have on the show, right? They all talk about like there's this thing that they had inside of them, but they didn't really know what it was until later, right? Were you feeling like, hey, young CJ is supposed to be doing this, or I feel really good when I'm doing this? What was that for you?
I liked writing. Writing became a really interesting and cool pastime for me. There was a teacher that I had that she and I were bumping heads all the time because I was the class clown. I was a kid that
Mm.
was always cracking jokes and fooling around and wanting to have fun. And she and I would bump heads all the time. But then she discovered that I was a good writer, and she helped sort of cultivate that skill set. So I was writing a lot of short stories when I was in high school, and that was kind of, I journaled, I did that kind of thing. I was really into like storytelling and being creative in that way. And she inspired me to become a journalism major. I started as a journalism major. I didn't finish as a journalism major, but I certainly started down that road of journalism and communications. I switched from being a journalist to a broadcasting and film major. I went to Boston University on a basketball scholarship. So most of my time was spent either working on short films and trying to create really interesting content, or at the gym working out and at practice or traveling for games. So, being a scholar athlete wasn't easy, but it was the opportunity that, got me to college, was being able to, play basketball. So I'm so grateful for having that skill. But boy, my knees are paying for it today,
I was gonna say
girl.
I'm not a team sport kind of girl. I was like a track and field athlete, cross country. Like I could not, I don't have the coordination to like dribble the ball and then have to worry about what's going on on the whole court. That was not for me. But it's interesting because when I was at Princeton, I worked at career services. And they often said the most successful students were the student athletes. For some reason, they were like, there's something that you learn as a student athlete that just takes you beyond the school, right? Beyond
Mhm.
graduation, that you're set up for success. I don't know if that's like, how to discipline yourself, right? You
Yeah.
know how to time manage because, listen, athletes, I had so much respect for student athletes. So, what do you think
Yeah.
was that superpower that you gained as a student athlete that you still see in your life today?
Yeah, they say athletes make great employees, and I believe it's true because when you're an athlete, and let's say you play on a team like basketball, you have a particular role on that team, and it is your job to do that thing better than anybody else. So when you take that discipline, you bring it into the workplace, I believe athletes stay in their lane. You know how you're at work and sometimes somebody from marketing is over here in the promotions area, and you're like, yo, stay in your lane. Like
Yeah.
athletes know what that lane is, and whatever that thing is that they do it better than everybody else. And that's their superpower. So athletes know how to be super hyper focused on what that assignment is, because that's the thing that you have to do better than everybody else. And we bring that discipline into the room. We know our lane and we stick to it. If you're a point guard, you ain't trying to be a shooting forward. You're a point guard, play your position. And I think that's what athletes bring to the table. It is really valuable in a workplace because so often lines are crossed, right? Somebody else is in your lane. It's like, yo, why is marketing trying to tell creative what's, it's a very, You know what I mean? But athletes, we're very much, you know what? Our job is to rebound. I'm gonna be the best damn rebounder on this team because that's my role, to rebound. And that's what I bring to the table. Same sort of analogy. You bring that skill set into the workplace and you do that thing better than anybody else, and you keep your head down and you do that thing.
So looking at your career, what were the superpowers that you were gaining throughout your, long career in media and entertainment? And we can talk about this. We don't have to go through every job, but maybe you can take us through a highlight reel, right? Highlight, I like that. Highlight reel. We'll turn this to like a little sports
Okay.
thematic here. A highlight reel of your career and the things you were learning about yourself during this time. Because I think sometimes we think that we're just like doing a job, but we're also learning so much about ourselves along our own journeys. So take me through your
Mhm.
career and the things you're learning about yourself during this key period of your life.
So I would say my career started when I began working for Terry Williams at the Terry Williams Agency. She's a very famous Black publicist during the 90s that represented everybody from Miles Davis to Earth, Wind and Fire to Whitney Houston. Like we had tons of high-end clients. So I started my career being exposed to the entertainment industry in a very up close and personal way. So I spent about 5 years doing PR, and then I realized that I really wanted to be in the television business, but nobody would give me a job. So at 29, I took a job making the same amount of money that I was making at 22 years old just to break into TV. And that was working in the library of HBO. And when I say the library, I mean I'm talking about the tape room where they keep all of the tape. This is before digital, y'all. This
I
whole
remember
streaming
that. I used
thing.
to I used to when I was a CBS intern, they had a whole like it was just like rows and rows and rows. I forgot what they called the archive
Yep.
library. We'd
Yep.
have to go there to get B-roll for news segments. So they might be like, "Hey, we need 1966 civil rights protest footage." And we'd have to like go across the street to the library and they'd have to like they would digitize it once we requested.
Right. Yeah, and it's not on tape. Sometimes it's on film, right? Like 1 inch film, 2 inch films on these big, huge, what do you call them? Spirals that you had to carry around to these edit rooms. So it was equivalent to starting in the mailroom. I was working in the tape library and I was bringing tapes to the producers that were working on promos for HBO. So I was watching the sports team put together all the sports docs. I was watching the doc team and all of the promo folks. This is where they were sort of creating the magic. I spent 15 years at HBO working my way up from that tape library until the very end when I was a senior writer producer in the creative services department. So, as a writer producer, I was working on some of the biggest campaigns HBO had at the time. I cut promos for Sex and the City for two
Oh wow.
years. Like, that was a joy. I cut a promo for a band of brothers that got me promoted to writer producer. Deaf poetry and all the promos around the deaf poetry campaign became my claim to
Shihan,
fame.
this type love is still my favorite deaf poetry poet. You know who that is? Like I want to love like you thinking of me, thinking of you type love. That was my
I
favorite.
absolutely know who you're talking
Yes,
about.
Shihan.
Yes, I didn't remember that person's name, but I definitely know that poem. I could tell you
Yes.
that. I've heard it a million times. So that became my claim to fame, working on projects like Deaf Poetry, Project Greenlight. I was looking at Whoopi Goldberg the other day. I worked on her comedy special. I did the promos for all of Whoopi Goldberg's comedy special. I worked on tons of HBO documentaries. I worked on tons of boxing promos. Floyd Mayweather, who I just saw, he was at the Lakers game. They said taking out stacks and stacks of money. I don't know if you saw the clip of him, but I
No.
did Floyd Mayweather's first boxing promo before he became, the fly pretty boy
That
Floyd.
So you
So
really are a storyteller. You've been a storyteller at heart and a story maker, I could say, because I feel like the promos really are what get people excited to come back and watch the real thing.
absolutely. We're the hype men. Our job is to hype you for the show that's coming out. So I spent some time at HBO, honing my craft, learning the business. And, one of the things I realized when I was there was that there weren't very many Black writer producers in the room. And to get to the point where you're a writer producer in that space, it took such high quality work to break through that it was nearly impossible. So if you looked around the room and you saw another Black person, that meant that they were at the pinnacle of their game because you had to go through some stuff in order to get into that room. So I started to make it my mission to try to pull other people in. So I would hire a Black composer when I could. I'd hire a Black graphic artist when I could, because there's no other way that you're going to get into this system unless somebody brings you in. So that became my superpower, putting people on, making sure people got love, making sure that I was able to get folks, employed, get them paid, and give them an opportunity.
Okay, guys, we're going to take a quick break for a word from today's episode sponsor.
The McDonald's snack wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch snack wrap. Spicy snack wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
And sometimes I'm so proud when I see the trajectory of people's careers based on that one thing that led to the next thing to the next thing. So I definitely consider that my superpower. And I really leaned into that as a superpower when I got to BET. So after spending all that time at HBO, I hit the glass ceiling. They weren't checking for me. I was like, what am I going to do? And I was offered a creative director position at BET. And I was like, this is great. So, now I'm actually calling the shots even in a bigger way. So I'm hiring the writer producers now. I'm able to hire, a graphic team and a tech team and all of that stuff. So I really leaned in there and, we worked on some huge projects. I launched Black Girls Rock. I was a creative director for Black Girls Rock.
Wow.
Yes, the first promo that we ever did with Nia Long, directed by Nzinga Stewart. Like that was my campaign. I worked with Marsha Ambrosius on the soundtrack for that. When we needed a custom track to go along with the campaign, I got to work with her and give her my vision. And one year we did a whole campaign where we were in the studio with Marsha Ambrosius doing the remix for Black Girls Rock. So I worked on Being Mary Jane, which was a really big project at the time. I was a creative director for that. So, BET was a great place for me to. So I went from an environment where I was at HBO and I was the only Black person in the room to moving to an environment where at BET, everybody was Black. You know what I mean? So you talk about a completely different, not only feel, but the culture was different. Like everybody looked like your aunt and that looked like your cousin and that,
Yeah.
and it just felt different. And I've never been in an environment that was so
Because you didn't
supportive.
go to an HBCU. I often hear people get that experience during the HBU experience. And we went to PWI. So it's like, you're sure. I mean, I always was sure of who I am, but I could only imagine what it would have been like to be in a room of people who are actively trying to uplift and like we're all in it together type mantra, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's a whole different feeling. We would have Monday morning meetings and it'd be like 30 of us in the room. And I remember so vividly, it was when there was a young man that was shot by a police officer. And we were all in the room and it was really somber and we were all feeling really heavy that morning. And we just started talking about experiences that we've had, and men in the room started talking about times that they've been stopped by police and how that made them feel. And one of my coworkers started to cry in the middle of our Monday morning meeting because not only was it a safe space, but he was so affected by what happened. That's why, you know, being at a white company when things go down like that, it's a completely like I was working, and to fast forward over at CNBC during the George Floyd uprising. And it was a completely different space. So I go from being in a black space where we could cry in a conference room because you know what I mean, to this space where now I can't even turn on my camera because I'm watching what's going on. And you're like, hey, who's bringing the donuts? You know what I mean? And shit that
You
was
just don't
just,
get it.
girl. And to this day, I'm pretty sure that's why most black people don't turn on their cameras because we came from a time where we couldn't put on the face. During that time when all those things were happening and we had to show up, we couldn't put on the face. So we had to turn off the camera because it was just too much.
Let us fast forward a little bit. I would love to learn about Guapify. You've had a illustrious career in media. You were doing your thing, right? What caused you to start Guapify? What was that little seed that was planted, and then we'll get into the driver's ed portion of the
Yeah.
interview.
So, as I alluded to, I was working at CNBC, which is a business network. And one of the things that I realized was that there was a conversation that people were having about money, and it was at a very, very high level, and it didn't include anybody that looked like me. And I sort of
Do
felt
you
some kind
mean they were having that conversation like amongst coworkers or just as part of the
all
network?
over, whether we were talking about promos about the Fed number coming out and we got to do a promo because the Powell blah 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 is going to drop like that whole conversation, even on air when you watch the pundits and they're talking about, what company is doing what, and they're talking to heads of, like, it rarely included us. They paraded us out during George Floyd. Remember when it was cool to be Black and have Black pundits and to have Black folks talking about stuff? But that wasn't a commitment. They didn't really see us in those conversations. And I felt some kind of way about not being included. And I also felt some kind of way about us meeting Black folks, wanting to have access to that information, but not actually knowing how to go about getting access. Like, how do we learn how to invest and spend and grow and all of these things? Like, we didn't have a forum to do that, whereas they have this great forum where they could talk about, guess what I did with my trust fund, and here's all of those conversations that we've heard about, but not really sort of been involved with. So I noticed there was this void. Nobody was talking to Black folks about money. And I wanted to create a safe space where we could exchange information and insights and put each other on to things that have worked for us money wise and the challenges that we've had. And it's a space that is conducive to feeling vulnerable enough to ask the questions so that you can level up your finances and we can start to close this wealth gap because Black millennials in particular are the ones that are suffering the most financially right now. I don't know. Are you a millennial?
Yes, I am. I'm a 91 baby, so yes.
So
Yes.
you're a millennial. So what they're saying right now is that you guys might be the first generation that doesn't surpass your parents financially. That's how challenging it is for you. You have more debt than your counterparts. You have less assets than your counterparts. You have more student loans, like all of the things. I like to say to people that millennials are the first generation that's never been in a car without a car seat. You guys have
Mm.
never ridden a bike without a helmet. You've had your play date set up for you. The term helicopter mom was derived from the millennial generation. And now you guys need some help with your money and your finances. And that's what Guapify is all about, stepping in to provide the resources and the people, the tools, the information that you need so that you can level up and start to really, increase your wealth.
So the way that we got connected is because we both share a free business mentor through the SCORE program, right? Shout
Mhm.
out to John. And he connected us because he's like, hey, Raina, you are one of my other mentees, like target market, right? Why don't you guys connect? And we've talked, a few times over the past few months. And I was so intrigued by your journey and your story. And I invited you on today because I know there's some challenges that you're working through with just building the community. And I think that's something that a lot of dream drivers are experiencing. So I wanted to put you in our driver's ed hot seat today, right? And
Okay.
we're gonna have a very hopefully I feel like this is gonna be like fun, right? It'll be a real like live workshopping of some of the big things that you're working through. So one of the first things that you mentioned is right? Really understanding how you're positioning your brand to help drive people to your new community. So, in like one line, what would you say Guapify is, right? And this is the one thing that I say when people are, when we're working through things and thinking of our messaging is what's that one line? Like, what is it? And then who do you serve, right? So, how would you answer that? What is Guapify? One sentence.
It's a little tricky because I was one thing and now I'm sort of pivoting to this other thing. So the thing that I started out being was a financial empowerment platform that puts you in touch with money experts to help you level up your game, right? That's sort of where I started. Where I'm pivoting to right now is building a community that I like to call the Reddit of Black wealth, where you'll find robust conversations around everything from real estate to investing to crypto to car buying, every money topic that there is. You'll find groups of people talking about that. So I like to say that we're a community where people talk about money in a safe space. So does that?
Like the inside, because when I think about like because I'm thinking about, I am your target market, right?
Hmm.
I would, and I liked what you mentioned earlier when you said when you were at CNBC, how you heard these people having these high level conversations, right? It's kind of like realizing, wait, their parents are putting them more into things, or like they're doing these things that I didn't even know existed. So for me, and when I think about like what would I like, how would I see that? I like your idea of like it being a Reddit for financial empowerment for Black folks, because you think about like,
Hmm.
hey, I can go here and I can learn something A that I didn't know before, or B that I trust that the person here is trying to put me on game in the sense of like, let me tell you what you need to be doing if you want to get on the same level as others, or here are the
Hmm.
secrets that nobody wants to tell you about, or here is a place for us to talk about a certain
Hmm.
particular like avenue of financial empowerment. So I like the whole idea of like a Reddit, but then I guess you don't ever want to use another brand. Like you wouldn't be want to be like, hey, I'm like the Nike for financial empowerment. So
Right.
I
Oh,
like,
you find that to be a negative?
no. I mean like in your description, you wouldn't put that
Oh,
on
in the
your website.
description. I
But
thought
I
you meant
think
in terms of what we're patterning it
no.
after.
I think when you're thinking of the messaging, it makes sense. But I'm just saying externally facing, right?
Yes.
Then you have Reddit put in the whole trademark. You know, they'll come after you with copyrights and trademarks, and then you'll be paying a whole bunch of money.
No, that's a talking point. That's not in the copy. But one of the challenges that I am sort of wrestling with is the fact that I'm not the expert. And
Mm,
John feels really strongly about telling people that because I am not the Black money expert. I am the conduit. I am the person that is gathering the people and putting the folks in the room so that we can have this discussion. You know, one of the superpowers that I like to claim is connecting people and this person needs something. I know somebody that can do the thing and putting people together. So how do I become a thought leader without being the expert? I guess is a
mm.
challenge.
I think too, I think that's twofold, right? I think number one, the first thing that came to mind is how are you showing up in the building of the brand, right? Because sometimes brands are built. I think about like, have you followed Blavity? You know who Blavity is, right?
I absolutely follow Levity.
So it's so interesting. I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm behind the scenes of like just that how that was built. So like, Blavity had Morgan, had oh my God, Jonathan Jackson, and I
And I
forgot
know
the other.
Jonathan.
You know Jonathan?
I
Oh yes,
do.
Jonathan. I love Jonathan. He was like one of my best friends from college, like in her group. Jonathan's dope, but like I feel like they were part of the brand building behind the scenes, right? So like when you thought of Blavity, you thought of the co-founders. Is that what you
Mhm.
want Guapify to be? Where when you think of Guapify, you think of CJ Harris? Because I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be like that, right? And
No,
that's
no.
that's
And
where I
that's
think you have a I think you could take yourself out of it in a way.
And I'm glad you said that because I don't necessarily want to be in it, right? That's the part that I'm really wrestling with. Like, how do I reconcile the fact that I want to be behind the scenes, but I'm also the founder of the brand? So, for instance, Morgan is so active on social media. Every time you scroll, you're going to see something from Morgan because
Yeah.
that comes naturally to her. Your generation, you guys have grown up on social and Instagram and all that stuff. It doesn't come that naturally to me. So I don't feel compelled to say, let me show you what I'm having for dinner, or let me tell you what happened, in my meeting today. Like there's a level of what's the phrase? Social media activity that is placed upon founders now, it almost seems whether you like it or not, right? So
Yeah,
is
like your
this
brand, you are the brand. That's what I had one past coach tell me because he's like, Raina, you have to like build your personal brand, build your personal brand. The personal brand is you. Dreams and Drive is you. And I fought
Hmm,
him for a long time because I think it gets overwhelming and you get burnout really quickly. Like, how do you
yeah.
scale that? But what I was thinking when you mentioned about like not wanting to be the face of the brand, I thought about your target market. Why millennials? And what generation are you? Are you millennial or are you Gen?
I'm a Gen Xer.
Okay, why millennials
Yeah.
versus Gen X? Because I say, and I'm thinking about if we're thinking about, like you mentioned, like you don't want to be on social media the way that millennials are. In a way, I feel like a lot of Gen Xers who are closer to the older millennial range, and I don't know it, but they also have a very unique set of issues because you may not have been set up as financially sound as you might have wanted to. So I would just love to learn about like why millennials versus Gen X.
So I wanted to to cast a wide net, meaning Black people in general, because as a culture, historically, we don't know money, right?
Mm.
We've never really had those conversations in our households. No one has taught us in school. We've all sort of figured it out on the fly. Um, the people that are, well, I had to pick a target audience, right? Because they're saying you can't say all Black
Yeah,
people.
because Gen Z, I feel like all the different generations all see money differently. These Gen Zers, they are something else.
But see, the thing is, there's some information that spills over that Gen Zers are interested in, and then there's information that's spilling over that the Xers are interested in. But if I have to say hyper focused on one particular group, the group that needs the most help because of the stats that I mentioned to you earlier are the Black millennials.
Hmm.
Now, my generation, what we're dealing with is a lot of us are transitioning from corporate, right? A lot of people have taken the buyouts. A lot of folks are trying to figure out what's next. You know, as a Gen Xer, is there still room for you in the workforce? What are you going to do about your assets? You know, when are you going to start tapping into your investment accounts and your retirement? So those conversations will be had as well. But if I have to say, who are we focused on? If people say, who is your target demographic? I'm always going to say Black millennials. But there are people that are in the fringes, which are the Gen Xers and the things that we're dealing with, and those Gen Zers, like getting credit. What does credit look like? Getting your first car, your first apartment. So all of those conversations, wherever you are in your financial journey, you're going to find somebody in our community that's right where you are, right? But our specific target demographic are Black millennials.
All right, and I think that helps me. I like that you really teed us up there because one of the other questions is like really figuring out what is that benefit to that user. So let's take these next few questions through the lens of a Black millennial, right? And I'm going to
Mhm.
ask you a few things, and I want you to kind of just first thing that comes to mind, right? If you are a Black millennial, where are they already getting this information? Where do they think they're already getting this information? Because I have a perspective, right? When I think of financial empowerment, I feel like a lot of people are using social media as their financial advisors. Do you know what I mean? It's like people are scrolling through TikTok. They are either like asking Chat GBT or they are following some podcast bros.
All of the above. All of the
Okay.
above. So the original website, what we were doing was we were curating content from in and around the web on all things Black people and money, including YouTube shows and podcasts. So a show like yours, Dreams and Drive, would end up in that scroll so that all the point was to try to house all the content in one place so that we're not having conversations in silos. We're having one conversation in one space and we're sharing all the information. So yeah, YouTube and podcasts, that's a big place where people get their financial information from. And just randomly scrolling on the internet, like there is no forum. You know, that's what we're really aimed to creating. We're aiming to create a forum where people can talk and feel like they can be vulnerable enough to ask the questions.
That just you just said something that I think is a good differentiator because I was here trying to think. I was going to ask you, so then what makes Guapify different? And I think the fact that you said forum, right? The fact that you
Mm,
said you're curating it in one place. Because I can go through TikTok, right? But I'm just like scrolling randomly. It's not always depending upon what the algorithm wants to feed me, or unless I'm following someone's specific channel, I may not get that. So I think about differentiation. I think about it being a forum all in one place. And then I also think about, you mentioned it being a community. So when you have a community, it's a two-way conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's often where we don't get on social media. We have people talking at us, but we're not
Mm-hmm.
able to then ask questions or make it a community conversation. Kind of how you liken
Right.
back to your, oh, this made me think about your story too. You talked about you being in the room at BET and what made being in a conference room at BET versus different during times of crisis, especially for, people of color versus being in a room at CNBC during those same moments of crisis, right? It's that feeling of belonging, that feeling of trust. You can trust your emotions. So if I were to go to Guapify, if I knew I was getting it in one place, I knew that I was going to get that family feel versus, I don't know. I'm trying to think about the difference between like being the only versus being one of many.
Mm.
Because I do think there are some cultural nuances to having money conversations when we're all together.
And when the people look like us, we talk differently about it, right? That was the
And
whole point.
it makes it less stressful. You
Because
know
it's
how
like
you
your aunties putting you on, it's your uncles putting you on, it's your peers sharing information, it's people that look like you. Because we talk about it differently. That's why it's called Guapify, because Guap is how we talk, right? It's for
Yeah.
us. And I want people to know that from the jump. It's for us. It's us talking to each other and putting each other on. Like I have a friend right now that he's always bragging about being in retirement and how much money he has
Mm,
and how black people should be doing this and the problem with black people. And I'm like, yo, come on the forum. Like you want to like share your wisdom and how you were able to level up. Like stop talking about what black people should be doing and come tell people and help people and share information and like let's stop hoarding the information and thinking that we're better than somebody else because we made better decisions. It's like, no, we had better information. We had better access. You know what I mean? My
yeah.
my world is a lot different than a lot of other people. So I try not to be I try not to what's the phrase that I'm looking for? Self-righteous. I try not to be self-righteous about what I know versus what someone else knows because truth be told, I am a student of my own platform. I'm learning every day. You know,
Yeah.
I'm figuring this out as my audience is learning stuff. So am I. I'm no expert.
But I think this is where we talk about your background. You have become an expert in community of just being able to tell stories, right? I think being able to gather people to be like how you said that you were able to help hire the people and then their career changed just by that one simple move that
Hmm.
you were able to help. So it's kind of like getting one piece of financial nugget could change your life and set you down a
Hmm.
whole new trajectory. You don't know what you don't know. And I'm just thinking about like I know we're like going through like what's in it for me, but I'm thinking about if I go here and let's say it's like, hey, you should buy term life instead of whole life, right? Because if you're investing, term life might be better long term than doing whole life and whatever. Let's say I go get a term life insurance and I invest and whatever. Now my whole financial future looks differently just because I listened to one thing that someone in Guapify shared that they did. So I feel like it's like a community sourcing, but also it's like this community empowerment at a micro level, but the micro kind of turns into now what's the opposite of micro, not macro? Like what's the bigger one? You know what I mean? But like it takes one little
Micro, macro.
yeah, yeah. So I feel like it sometimes just takes people letting their guards down, like being in a space where you don't feel judged, where you can ask open and honest questions. Where there, I know for me, I like to see how other people are talking about things. So, like, if you're in the community, can you kind of look through other people's conversations and see what they're being said there?
Hmm.
So I kind of feel like when we're thinking about how do we position you, CJ, I kind of feel like it's more a story of what led you here, right?
Hmm.
Versus your expertise. But I do think like you're gonna have to in the platform then just make sure that you're maybe it's not like I mean financials are very tricky. So I know it's a very highly regulated market, right? When it comes to like financial advising, you're not here to say that this is you're not providing expert financial advice unless someone is signing up with, let's say, a financial advisor one-on-one, right? Like that's not what
Mm-hmm.
you're promising. What are you promising then? What will people leave if someone was to spend 45 minutes on the Guapify platform? What do you hope they leave with?
Some gems and some nuggets
What
that
kind of gems? Be specific.
I think we have some challenges on the site right now. So one of the challenges says upgrade your business system, a 14 days challenge. So if you took this challenge, would it make you a better business person, a better entrepreneur? If we had a budgeting and savings challenge, would it make you better at understanding what your budgeting should look like? Like, I want there to be tangible, actionable things that you can do to improve your money situation. And if you have questions about something and you weren't sure where to go, I hope that you were able to find the answer that you were looking for after going on to our forum.
Okay, so when you leave Guapify, you'll leave it with tangible, actionable advice or information that will
Hmm.
help you level up at some part of your financial journey.
That'll help you move the needle on your
Yeah, move. I
finances.
like the word move the needle. That is good because I
Yeah.
think about like there are people who are at different stages of moving the needle. Maybe they don't know anything, right? Or
Hmm.
maybe they're like, "Hey, I'm already doing this, this, and this. What else could I be doing?"
Hmm.
That seems to be a benefit to me. Really communicating that is like wherever you are along your, if you're a Black millennial, wherever you are along your journey,
Hmm.
Wapify can help move the needle for you in some way in a safe space, in a empowered space, in a trusted space, like safe, empowered, and trusted. I think are the things that we need as a community because I think that we can easily be what's the word? Not used, but like we can be victims of people who want to be predators towards like
Hmm.
think about elders. I know we're talking to millennials, but like people come and say, "Hey, give me this money and then invest it here." And now the elders like, "What happened to my
Yeah.
money?" Right? So
People
it's
get
like,
duped all the time. I watched a story, I think a young lady in Virginia that said that she was flipping houses and got people to invest in her flipping houses business. And they said she just ran off with the money. And this is major investors. She was somebody that had like tons and tons of followers. She was an influencer.
and I think that's also if we think about like what are people's hesitations, and I think understanding your core market's hesitation can also help you then write the flip side
Mm,
of that. So like
mm,
that's a good thing to understand. Is like there's a lot of millennials who feel like especially in social media, you can't trust people who talk about money in social media. And
mm,
especially other black people, because there might be, was that person a person of color?
mhm,
Like, that's a big thing that I've seen, like, people who pretend to want to help you out, but they really are scammers. That's what it is. Scammers. People are
yeah,
scared of scammers. So
yeah.
it's like really having some sort of like authentication system. I don't know what that means, but like, or having it very visible. Like maybe it's like when you're talking to this person, there's a badge there that says, hey, they are a certified Guapify expert. Or maybe it's like a community member badge versus someone who's like the expert or, um, what's the word? Not leader, but there's another word for moderator, right?
Mhm,
I
mhm.
think that could be a good way because number one, people are scared of scammers. So, what's something else that you think is a hesitation for your target market?
I think the fact that people don't know what they don't know, and you
Mm,
might think that you're doing all the things that you're supposed to do, but you don't realize all these other things that you should have been thinking about. You know what I mean? So not knowing that there's certain things you just don't know, you know.
yeah.
Let me give you an example. I just got my tax bill for the house that I live in, and the tax bill is $2,000 more than it was last year. $2,000 more. That's a pretty big hit. So I spoke to a friend of mine that understands real estate, and he said, what does the tax office have on your house? Meaning, what does it say? What is the layout? What is all the information? Because when he looked up my house on Zillow, it said that I had 3 beds, 2 baths. I was like, I only have 1 bath. He's like, well, you need to go see what the tax office has because that's going to determine what your taxes are. And once you get that, then you find comps of houses that have those similar layouts, similar whatever, and then you start to be able to compare apples to apples because if they think you got 2 bathrooms and you got one, and that's the difference between a house being valued at 550,000 and 400. Like, you get what I mean? Like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that
You
you could
you
go
know
to
what
the
that
tax office and
you know
do
what that
that.
made me think of? I mean, this is more talking about features for Guapify, but it made me think like if you could easily browse people's money questions and like look at the answers. Because imagine if there's like a platform where you can just see like people are asking money questions and there's someone in there answering them. And it's kind of like, wait, although I don't own a house yet, I know people who do own houses now. And now I feel more empowered to help my community because now I'm like increasing my knowledge base. So when I
Yeah.
think about another benefit for Black millennial, because we also have aging parents, right? We're almost part of the sandwich generation where our parents are getting older. A lot of our parents had us older, right? So like they're older parents, but like now I could go back to my mom and be like, "Hey mom, what's your tax bill? Let's go." So I think it's also like even if it's not a money issue that has something directly to do with me, I think that it's also communicating this just like everybody wants to eat healthy, right? Everybody wants to become physically fit, emotionally fit. Being financially fit is also very important, especially for our community. Even if everything doesn't affect you, I think understanding that how you're connected through these money issues is important. I also am somebody who likes to just learn things.
Mm,
So if I was reading just about random financial things, like, oh, here's your like financial tip for the day type of thing, where if it's an app or if it's a community and it pops up and says, hey, how to how to decrease your tax bill.
yeah.
Like, I'm just thinking about like as a everyday person on the go, like
Hmm.
I might not have that time to like be in the community every day, but if there's something like where you get an email a day that has your like guapify tip of the day, how to guap
Hmm.
up your life. I don't know, like like something
No,
like
you're
that.
on it. You're on it. You're on
It's
it.
That's where I think where then I'm seeing, oh wait, this is very helpful. And if it's easy to share. Because let's say I got my guap, here's the guap question of the day. Guapify member asked, hey CJ, I got a tax bill. Da, 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 da. And then you show the answer. And now I'm able to share that or forward that. Maybe it's not showing the person's name, but just showing like the answer to that question. Now I feel like I can empower others with that information. And when you're thinking about how do you build your community, is you have to make sure that whatever you're building is very easily shared as well.
Shareable.
Because although people like living in like closed circuit, networks, at the end of the day, people want to feel like they're helping other people. They want to feel
Mm,
smarter. They want to feel empowered. There is that dopamine hit you get when someone's like, oh my God, thank you for sharing this. Oh my God, I didn't know
mhm.
that, right? So,
Yeah.
how can you, as Guapify, create these moments you know, of endorphins, I guess, for other people as they're learning, but also as they're empowering themselves and others. So,
I like the way you put that. That's a really good way to look at it. That dopamine hit you get when you are sharing information.
but then think about that dopamine hit you get when you're saving money or when you're like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's a good feeling to feel like you got guap in your pocket, right? Like you wanna, like legit, like I got the guap and it's in my pocket. It's an app or it's a community, and I can go in
Mhm.
there and I can feel I'm in a safe space, I'm in an empowered space, but I'm also learning things. And I think for you as the expert, I'm going to kind of wind down a little bit because we could go on and on here about
Yeah, we could.
so many different things. But I think for anyone listening is like if you've settled on your target market, really think about like where are they already getting this information? How are you going to be different? And then contest what their hesitations are. Like they think people
Mm,
are scammers. How do you show them that this is not what Guapify is? Or they
mhm,
feel like there's too much financial information. How do you say, hey, but we're going to give you distilled advice and you can search by whatever, whatever? Like there's so many things to think through there. Um, and then when I think about you, we didn't really get to talk a lot about um, you as the founder. I think sharing your journey of just being in spaces where you could tell the difference that you felt as a person when you were one of one versus one of many,
mm,
and how that empowered you, right? And how you know when people are amongst community, when people are amongst those that look like them, that talk like them, that's when you can get that real change. It's kind of like I think about like my son, right? One of the reasons why I didn't put him in private school so early is because I want him to get a sense of self, right? I want him to know who he is and I want him to be confident in who he is. So even if you don't have the best resources right now in the elementary school he's with teachers who care about him and who knows what it means to be a black young child, right? And that confidence that you get by being in those spaces, well, now he'll be confident anywhere he goes. So I think it's like
mm.
that foundational
Yeah,
experience for
don't
him.
underestimate that. My kid went to school in the Bronx. She went to one of those independent black, you know, rah 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 type schools. When we moved to New Jersey, Mecca and her best friend, they were the only two black girls in the entire middle school. So that sense of pride, and I remember going to one of the teacher conferences, and the teacher said to me, I've never met anyone so comfortable in their skin. And for her to
Mm.
say that about my kid, it meant that all that we pumped into her, that Black revolutionary, know of self, that kind of thing, that was armor that she was proud to wear as she stepped into any space. And so I applaud you for realizing that because it makes a difference.
Yeah, and it's just like I think you do need, and kind of connecting that back to Guapify, of feeling like you're in this space where the other people around you are supporting you and genuinely, authentically want you to win. I
And rooting
think
for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to communicate even in your brand messaging. And of course, we didn't go into like the actual like features or user interface and all of that. But I think communicating that emotional resonance and what you're providing emotionally for the people who are listening to what who are going to not listening. I'm thinking of podcasts. People who
Mhm.
are going to be using and interacting with the Guapify platform, that's what's going to help drive, that's what's going to help you get other people on, like you get them in with that emotional connection, right? Like this is a safe space for you, and then you kind of build out the architecture of how that comes to life as well. But
Mhm.
that's kind of the first thing that came to mind when thinking about just how are you showcasing what they're getting and what's the point of view. Lean into, although you're not necessarily a millennial, I think you can lean into your experience and just knowing, right? It's kind of like being like if you have is your daughter older? Is she teenager? Like what? How around how old is she now?
He's a Gen Zer.
Okay, okay. So like like you're a parent, right? So you know that it kind of takes the generation before to kind of help guide you. So lean into that, right? Like lean into those parts of it. And I would kind of say like I don't think you necessarily have to be the expert, because now after talking to you, it's not that you're trying to provide the expert advice, you're curating the conversations that need to
Hmm.
happen, and
Hmm.
conversations are what drive change. Oh, I like that. Conversations are the things that drive change, and see where it goes. Like this is going to be something that evolves. But I think if you get really tight on just building that emotional connection, make it very simple. What are the conversations? What are the money things that's on your mind today? It's kind of like, when Siri can pop up and be like, "Hey, how are you, Raina?" Right? Like,
Mm.
what if it's just like, "What's the money issue on your mind today?" And then you have someone kind of starting the conversation and people chime in and start talking about it. To me, that seems different. To me, that seems like cool to kind of get to be as one of the first to do it. And yeah, leaning into it from there.
I love that. That's great advice.
Helpful. And for people listening in, this was kind of fun to do. I know I was kind of all over the place. I kind of get excited when we talk about this, but let's like continue, CJ. Just if you have any questions, like let me know what's on your mind. Let me know if this was helpful, and definitely let our listeners know where they can check out Guapify for themselves if they are now intrigued and inspired to start their own financial empowerment journey.
Uh, you're so funny. This was incredibly helpful. I can't believe that you're even questioning that. I wish we could do a part two at some point
We
because
can. We definitely can.
I'd love to dive a little deeper. But right now, they can go to guapify.com. We're in the process of reskinning that site, so you're going to see a button on there that'll take you straight to the community. But in the meantime, check out what we're doing, the type of content we're curating around all things Black people and money. And I hope you join the community because it'll definitely bring some value to your life.
Thank you, CJ. I really hope that our dream drivers enjoyed hearing this conversation just as much as I have. And I respect you for what you're doing. And I know that like pivoting to a whole new world can be different because you talked about it, right? Like you're coming from media entertainment and now you're building a financial
Yeah.
empowerment community. But I love that because I think it just shows that your dream driving journey doesn't have to be monolithic and that. All right, so that's a wrap for this episode with CJ. I hope that you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey and the many keys to success that she shared as she live workshopped her business, her dream driving journey, and the challenges she's facing in the messaging, the branding, and figuring out her core audience strategy. This was so fun for me to do. If you feel like you are somebody who would love to live workshop one of your dream driving challenges, please sign up at dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. That's dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. As always, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in the next episode. Bye, guys.